John.
Good to see you.
Welcome back. Stadium Arcadium, the monster record.
Yeah, it's our most ambitious, project in a lot of ways. Not just in the size of it, but we're putting together so many styles of music that for us we're separated before that we're able to turn into one thing.
Definitely a prolific time for you as a band, and can you describe sort of a normal day during the writing period for you guys? When you were hanging out in your rehearsal room, and were you writing during the day and the evenings? How did it kind of pan out?
Yeah. I'd be thinking about it all the time. From the second I woke up, everything that I listened to was specifically geared because I wanted to be directed in a certain way. I wanted to be inspired by certain kinds of music. I wanted to be inspired by certain kind of energies. And so for me, it was an all-day thing every day. Usually, at nighttime, I'd prepare for rehearsal by listening to records and playing along with records and coming up with ideas for songs and recording them on my mini disc. And then when I'd wake up the next morning, I'd listen to the ideas that I'd made up the night before and pick out which I thought was the best one to bring into rehearsal that day. And I'd try every rehearsal to bring in at least one idea.
It's one of the things I like about you is that, with every record, you're not afraid to list the influences and the people that you were listening to during the making. And a lot of musicians tend to isolate themselves and claim, at least, they don't listen to music. They don't bother, absorbing anything else outside of what they're doing. You obviously think it's an important part of the process to listen to things, as you mentioned, like Wu-Tang Clan, Brandy, all sorts of random influences.
Yeah, some people, I guess, are in fear of not being original sounding themselves. And for me, I usually try to pick things that are so far from what I'm doing that they end up just putting a little accent on what I do,
So how does the Wu-Tang Clan influence this new record, So you help me make the connection, because I'm a big Wu-Tang fan, so I want to be able to make the connection.
Yeah, the album that I was specifically listening to all the time was Enter the 36 Chambers.
First debut, classic.
Yeah, and I would listen to all the first solo records of each guy.
Right, like Only Built for Cuban Links and the Jesus record and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the golden era.
Yeah, those are the records. It was just like every morning it would be one of those records that I'd listen to when I went running and stuff. And I'd study them at nighttime and stuff. Mostly, for me, I was really wanting to get out of playing straight up and down all the time. And I wanted one thing that Wu-Tang really brought was they weren't rapping straight.
They go left or right off the beat.
Yeah, they'd go off time. There'd be all this off time stuff, and that's what I wanted to do with my guitar. And I still feel like I can go further in that direction, and that's 100% inspired by people like them, their rapping style.
To me, that you seem to have the broadest desire to go out and experiment and to continuously create with others outside of the Chili Peppers. I know Flea is a very creative man, but you're out doing 6 solo records over a short period of time. You're out there, contributing aspects to Miles Volta records and constantly collaborating with people like Perry Farrell, whatever it is. Do you think that there's a part of you that needs to do this in order to make sense of being in this monster? Being the Chili Peppers, this huge band that so many people love on such a huge scale.
Yeah, I've got that part of myself where I'm one of those people who needs to change. Not only do I change my taste in music all the time, but I change the way that I approach the guitar. I change my idea of what movies are good. My opinions are constantly changing, and in the same way, I need to change my musical environment from time to time, It's not enough for me to just do one thing, to just do the Red Hot Chili Peppers, especially with the Mars Volta and with my solo records. They've been a very necessary part of my existence as a human being, because I can't just let myself be clearly defined like that as just being a guitar player in a band. It's not that it's not enough for me. It's just that I have too many other interests. My creativity is going in too many other directions. When I was a kid, that was part of the problem. Was what am I going to be? I love so many different kinds of music that seem so opposed to each other. They can't coexist. What kind of music am I going to play? That was a hard question for me. I really didn't know. I would always trying to figure out what styles can I combine, to really, and as it's turned out, on this Mars Volta record, I play on the whole record, but I'm just playing written parts. But it's the side of me that plays like fast, complicated, crazy things that I would never play in the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
But ever since you rejoined the Chili Peppers, and obviously it's not coincidental that it earmarked a time when the band became really successful again, and a lot of people swarmed to the band again because, you know, your input was valued and missed. You know, now when you look over your life, and I've met you a few times, you don't strike me as the kind of guy that goes partying with a black credit card. You know, you seem to, you know, surround yourself with things that make you happy. What does 10 million sales per album and the box office receipts of one of the largest draws in the world of touring, but what does that bring to your life, if anything? Do you know what I mean? That kind of success. I mean,
I guess a lot of freedom, freedom in a certain way, because I do get to buy all the records that I want to buy, and I get to have my own recording studio and things like that. I get a certain kind of freedom. I get to basically make my life all about playing music all the time. You know, and that's really the main thing I have to think about is how am I gonna, you know, where's my music going? You know, for me, when I quit the band the first time, I think it's kind of a misconception that it was because we were popular. You know, I had things I was going through inside that just didn't gel with being in a rock band that was on tour. You know, like I needed to figure things out that were going on me in the inside that I was really confused about, and I knew that being in the band wasn't helping me as a person anymore. That was really the biggest thing. It was like being in the band was a negative experience for me as a human being, and for me, I count being a human being before I count being successful.
And wisely so.
You know, and that's why I quit. It wasn't that I had a problem with success. I would have been fine with success if I was in a band with people who I loved, who loved me, and we were really proud of what we were doing together. Then that's how it is now. Yeah. And so I'm 100% like very grateful for it, you know. But at that time, it wasn't going with who I was inside as a person, and if the same thing happened to me now, I would do the same thing. I'd quit again. You know? Yeah. But at the moment, I'm really happy with you know, everything about being in this band.
28 songs on Stadium Arcadium, and like I said, a healthy chunk of your guitar playing. And there are kids listening all over the world right now, many of them, who look at you as true inspiration, and in many cases, you know, their favorite guitar player. You've got a very unique style, one that is your own, a direct expression of who you are at the time whenever you start playing. Just for those kids who are listening, who perhaps are aspiring guitarists, some at different levels than others, what are some of the most simple and most, you know, obvious childlike lessons that you've learnt about your craft and about playing guitar over the course of your life today?
I think the most important thing is that is your love and your enthusiasm for music in general. You know, I don't think there's any rules. Like I think it's helpful to learn theory and things like that. But I think as long as you put the time in, as long as you put the studying in, that's the important thing. You know, it's the love you give to it that really is going to make the difference in the long run. You know, but at the same time, I think if you're somebody who's really dedicated, you're going to want to know everything there is to know. You know, people always use that, like, Jimi Hendrix didn't know theory, so I don't need to know theory idea. But
he was
wanted,
Jimi Hendrix.
Not only was he Jimi Hendrix, but he wanted to. He grew up extremely poor, and he would have loved to take lessons if he could. If he didn't have the money to take lessons, what he did was go around asking blues guitar players questions, and he was the guy who would just drive a person crazy because he'd be asking them 30 questions in an evening, you know, about how does this work? Well, how do you do this? How do you think of this? You know, so he kind of got lessons just from talking to people and bugging them, you know, and when, you know, and he was definitely quoted as saying, like, that he'd love to take 6 months off and go to music school. So people shouldn't use that as a, you know, in my opinion, like, don't close yourself off to anything. Like, be open to learning as much as you can learn. You've got nothing but time to learn. Yeah, for me, like, I'm, you know, look at Flea. It's like Flea used to play trumpet and read music on trumpet when he was a kid, but lately he started finally, like, applying that knowledge to the piano and to the bass and stuff, and now he's writing a piece for classical instruments and bass, you know, like he's writing his own form of like classical music now, like, and in my case, I'm also going into studying classical music myself. Like Flea is more in a jazz direction and I'm more in a classical direction, but it's like, I just don't think it ever stops, that learning and that growth. You know, if you look at history, like, it's rock musicians who, you know, who wave that, like, I don't need to learn anything flag, and that end up just getting worse, you know. And you look at jazz musicians like you know, Charles Mingus, Sam Rivers, like these people, like, as they get older, they just keep growing and changing and getting better, and like that's because their dedication is to learning and changing and studying, and not in just, I can do this, so watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude.
Like to me, if that's your reason for doing things, like you're already starting off coming from the wrong place. It's not about like what you can show to people. It's about what you can understand, what you can love, what you can experience, what you can express. You know.
Beautifully put, John. It's been great spending some time with you again, man. Great record. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, man.